Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Developing a Proper Worldview. This is episode number 63, and we're just wrapping up the Aaron Russo documentary, Freedom to Fascism. Um, we've got about 40 minutes left, I think. So, which means we're continuing our series here in what I call part three, the American Empire. So if you happen to be catching this video just randomly, out of sequence, please go back and watch them in order. There's a purpose, there's a plan behind the order, so I do believe it's necessary to watch them in that order. We're trying to, like the title says, develop, step by step, creating a proper biblical worldview, understanding geopolitical events and the times that we live in, understanding them from a biblical perspective. Um, what I believe is a biblical perspective, what I believe is an accurate interpretation of biblical prophecy and just understanding the world in the light of the scriptures and what the scriptures have to say about our current state, about this time that we live in, which I believe is nearing the end. Um, so like I say, it is important to understand these things properly. You have to have spiritual insight to understand spiritual matters, and this is a spiritual matter. Even though we're looking at worldly, physical events, we're understanding them from a spiritual perspective, which is the truth, which is the reality that we live in. It's this is God's world. Things are unfolding according to His plan, and so we're trying to understand things from what He says about things. Um, Namely, from the scriptures like Revelation chapter 13, 2 Timothy chapter 3, Daniel chapter 9, Daniel chapter 12, Psalm chapter 2. These are some of the key biblical references that I think help us to understand what's going on in the world, and how the scriptures talk about a new world order, or as the scriptures put it, a beast system, a beast kingdom, an empire that'll dominate the entire world, an antichrist, anti-God, anti-Christian world empire, an immoral world empire. And we're seeing that. So when you understand these things, it makes sense of the world. You can see the events of the world, and it makes sense why things are occurring the way they are. Like currently, in our political atmosphere in America, they're talking about gun control. And when you might think, well, that's a good thing. We want to get guns out of the hands of criminals. But when you understand things from the correct perspective, when you understand that there's a power behind the scenes that's totalitarian and evil, and wants to enslave and mistreat and kill its citizens, you understand that gun rights, the Second Amendment, is a deterrent to that. And so when our politicians and leaders are pushing for that, there's an ulterior motive. It's not about the school shootings. It's not about the killings. It's about control, and the elite of this world fear the populace. They fear, I think, more than guns. They fear knowledge. They don't want people to know what's going on. But then outside of that, they also fear if they were to try to start enforcing martial law, if they were to just jump into totalitarianism tomorrow, there's a whole host of the American populace that would resist that with arms. And even though I believe our government, or our country, was founded on unbiblical principles, it was founded on rebellion against a king. And I personally don't think Christians are to take up arms. I think it's antithetical to the Christian to fight fire with fire. We're not supposed to kill. We're not supposed to hurt. We are supposed to suffer wrong. It's better to allow ourselves to be wronged than to sin and do injury to another human being, especially somebody who's lost. Like if you kill somebody who's lost, um, that's, they're going to hell afterwards. That's a tragic thing. So I don't think Christians should be taking up arms at all. Um, but I do understand the reason we were given a Second Amendment was to protect us from tyranny. When the government fears its citizens, you have freedom. When the citizens fear government, you have tyranny. And so the Second Amendment was put in place so that the elite, that the government would fear its population. And so when they attempt to take guns from the population, they're using sympathy, pulling on the heartstrings, using these murdered children as a reason to promote this ideology. But really, what they're doing is they're trying to get the guns out of people's hands. That way, there's no resistance to their plan. And I think that their plan has been unfolding for many years, as we're starting to learn here with this look into the New World Order, look into the American Empire, which can trace its foundations back to like Francis Bacon, and even prior to that, to the Knights Templars and the Rosicrucian cult, and then you could trace it back even further to the Garden of Eden. But specifically, this American New Atlantis can be traced through Francis Bacon to Benjamin Franklin to our founding fathers, to today. There's an occult foundation, and I lost my train of thought there. I forgot where I was going with that. But anyways, I forgot where I was going with that. I apologize. We're in the middle of the American Empire series. We did part one, which was laying the foundation of the gospel. Part two was the fake pseudoscience of evolution. Just showing how that wicked idea is kind of foundational to discredit the Creator God, to discredit the Scriptures, and the whole world is ensnared by that ideology. And then part three, we're showing the American Empire, and how I believe that the American Empire is the strong arm of the New World Order. It is the muscle, it's the might, it's the military, it's the force behind the New World Empire. And its foundations were set up for this purpose. It was started with a hidden agenda to be the new Atlantis, to create this occult utopia, this do what thou wilt society, where they cast off the reins of God and conscience, which is what Psalm 2 talks about. And the American Empire is being used to drive that home. We've got military bases in like 180 countries or something like that, and the American idea is spread worldwide. We always hear about spreading democracy, and just that's a fallacy. It's spreading this new world order totalitarianism that's hidden behind this veil of materialistic freedom, of materialistic prosperity. That's conditioning everybody to think that all this gain is a good thing. But once they have their net in place, they'll pull the trigger, and it's going to end up far worse than anything we've ever seen before. The New World Empire will be worse than North Korea, will be worse than Pol Pot and Stalin and Hitler. It'll be just a tragic society, especially for the believers. We're going to be persecuted worldwide, but understanding this helps us to keep our eyes focused on the kingdom of God, to take our eyes off this empire, to realize that we're not part of it. Although we're here, we're strangers and pilgrims and aliens, the Bible says. We're not part of this kingdom. This isn't our country. This isn't our world. We're citizens of it, but only physically. We don't belong to it. We've been translated from this kingdom into the kingdom of light, and so understanding that just helps us to separate that in our minds, to not get ensnared with what the world is chasing after. to not get ensnared with gain and the lust of riches. Even though that's still hard, even when you have this knowledge, it's still hard um, to separate ourselves from that. But it helps and it prepares our hearts for what's coming. To understand that this new world order system is so close, that our politicians talk about it openly. The freedoms that are going to be eliminated under this tyrannical system are slowly being eroded piecemeal. And we can see that. Understanding what's really going on helps us to be aware of how close we are and how ready we need to be. Jesus, often, especially talking about end times events, said, "See, I've told you beforehand." He told us ahead of time so that we could have our hearts prepared. We have to endure to the end. And so part of that is being on alert, being on high guard, understanding the times that we live in. So we're in the midst of laying that foundation. I've been blabbering on and on here. I always feel like I don't know what to say at the beginning. I feel like a lot of it's repetitive, so I apologize about that. I suppose you can always just fast forward and jump into the video part. We've got just this last part of freedom to fascism, and I'm not sure where we're going after that. There's still a lot of documentaries to go. We're probably 1/10 of the way on disc 63, and I've got to pick up my game. There's several DVDs I own that I haven't watched yet. I need to and I planned on watching them ahead of time to see if I'll add them to this series, because there's other documentaries that are okay, but I don't think they're worthy of us watching together. And then there's also probably another dozen or so documentaries that I want to purchase, so that we can go through those as well. So, if you feel led, pray that the Lord would give me the financial ability. Times are a little tight right now, so I can't just buy the documentaries like I used to. I have to be wise about when I purchase them, but if you could pray that the Lord would provide those and that I would be motivated to watch those other documentaries ahead of time so that I can see whether or not we get into them. Because we have skipped some. We skipped over part one. We watched The Way of the Master, but we only watched a few episodes. There's a lot more to that as well. I recommend that you go back and watch those. Those are really good. I just didn't think it was necessary for us to go through them all. There's several documentaries on evolution. I have a ton from Answers in Genesis that I haven't watched, so we didn't go through those. We went through the ones that I thought were most important, but if you go to aig.org, I think, or Answers in Genesis, or just do a Google search, it's Ken Ham's ministry, and go to their store. They're pretty solid. I can pretty much guarantee you that anything you're going to find on there is going to be worthwhile. So if you're into like carbon dating or starlight or just anything that you can imagine, fossils and just everything, go on there and you can find numerous documentaries on there that are going to be worthwhile watching. There's also, let's see here, what else have we skipped so far? The G. Edward Griffin series, Hidden Agenda. It's a 6-part series, exposing the communist idea behind the New World Order. But as I've explained before, I believe that communism is just one aspect. It's all totalitarianism. When the real spectrum of freedom, there's freedom and there's totalitarianism, and all the isms fall under the same branch. So there's really no distinction between communism or fascism or an oligarchy or feudalism or whatever else. It's all the idea of the elite having power. It's just different managing ways to get there. And so the freedom that America was supposed to have, that is the constitutional republic, that we were supposed to have, that was real quickly replaced by democracy, which is just mob rule, which is just one step away from this totalitarianism. So this idea of democracy really quick replaced and covered up the constitutional republic that we're supposed to have. And so these freedoms that we have been slowly eroded over time, because the elite realize, when like I say, if you have an armed populace, you have a group that believes in freedom, you can't just spring totalitarianism on them. They'll revolt, they'll fight, and there's more of them than there is of the elite. So they've had to slowly piecemeal condition people to the idea of totalitarianism. And so they've slowly eroded the freedoms. They've slowly taken the freedoms. And I think it really sped up, which is what we're looking into here, when they took over the money system, when they made society a society of debtors, of usury. When they took over the money and then took over the corporations, they took over the government, and then they use crisis. Every time there's a new crisis, they offer a solution that eliminates some sort of freedom that we're supposed to have, like the gun control. Or after 9/11, how they took away your right to privacy. They started reading emails and snooping through texts and all that. So, but everything is slowly being eroded, and we're real close to this. Right now, we just have a thin veil of freedom. It's an illusion. The government can do whatever they want to you, but they pretend to allow you this materialistic prosperity lifestyle that people mistakenly think is freedom. But at any moment they can take that away. We're real close to this totalitarianism. So when somebody dives in specifically into one aspect of totalitarianism, like communism, I don't think it's really hitting on the nail of the head of what the real issue is. Communism is just a way of getting us to this new world order. But it's not the end goal. The end goal is not communism. The end goal is an empire under one Caesar. It's a satanic empire with him as the head. So communism is just a route to get there. But it is worth watching. It's check those out, called Hidden Agenda. There's also what the heck was the name of it? There's two other documentaries that we're missing out here. Let's see. Just give me 1 second here to look these up. So the Hidden Agenda, and then there's another two-part series just called Agenda. One is called Grinding America Down, and then Agenda 2 is called Masters of Deceit. And then there's another one called There's No Place Like Utopia, or There's No Place to Utopia. Or maybe I wrote that down. There's No Place Like Utopia, I think is what it's supposed to be. But Hidden Agenda, Agenda 1 and 2, and There's No Place to Like Utopia are all focusing on the communism ideology that's eroding America's freedom. But like I say, that's just one aspect, so I really didn't want to focus in on that. But check those out on your own time. After we're done with Freedom to Fascism, we're going to watch The Collectivist Conspiracy, and that'll wrap up part 3 of our series. Part 4, we're going to look into 9/11, the events that happened on 9/11, because I believe those were a trigger event, and it's really the event that woke me up to reality, that started me down this trail. So we're going to look into that. And then part 5, we're going to look into martial law, which is a scary idea, but Christians need to prepare themselves for this kind of persecution. It's a technological persecution that'll be more advanced and more comprehensive than anything that's ever been seen. Like it's an all-encompassing dictatorship that you can't hide from because of technology, facial recognition, drones, all these things they have that can track us and hunt us down. And then there's a part we're going to skip that's just like government cover-ups and stuff like that. It's just interesting to see how the government covers things up. But we'll skip over that. A lot of that's just individual events like Waco, the JFK assassination, Project Lucid, the Oklahoma City bombing, things like that. I'll give you a list of documentaries you can watch on those as well when we get there. And then part 6 will be focused on the New World Order, not just the American part of it, but the whole thing, the New World Order that's coming into play, specifically led by America. A lot of these, almost all of these documentaries are made from an American perspective, so they're going to have that slant to it. I really don't know what's going on in the rest of the world because of that. We don't get a lot of information about the rest of the world in America. Part 7, we're going to look at the occult foundations of this all the different occult organizations that high-level politicians are involved in, like Freemasonry, Mormonism. We're going to expose Catholicism, the prosperity gospel, Islam, the Illuminati, things like that. And then part 8, we're going to look at the media cover-up. Why is it that society doesn't know about these things? Well, because the media is controlled by these same elites. So we got several documentaries showing that. Part 9, we're going to look at the banking system, which is just a follow-up to this documentary we're watching here right now that shows how they control the money, and therefore they control really everything. And then part 10 is going to be population control. One of their agendas is to limit the amount of people, and we're going to look at how they do that through several different areas: vaccines and medicines, through water, through the air, through polluting the air, through the food that we eat, through schooling, and through psychology. And then part 11, we're going to look into the various Bible versions and how I believe those are corrupted and used to mislead Christians or lead Christians into false ideas there. Part 12, we're going to look at the pre-tribulation error that's pervasive amongst Christianity. This idea that before things get really bad, the Lord's going to come and just invisibly snatch us up into the air and we won't have to deal with it. It's a lie that's comforting Christians and leaving them unprepared. So it's dangerous. And then part 13, we're going to look at end times and just show how I think that we are living on the verge of all these events. We're living on the precipice of it. If we're not the last generation, we're one of the last generations. We're right at the end. And then if need be, we'll have some bonus material as well. But like I say, I still got a lot of documentaries that I need to purchase. I'm looking right here at least 15 of them. And then I've got several that I still need to watch to see whether or not they're worthy of doing here. But anyways, that's a really long introduction. I didn't plan on talking this long. Let's jump into the DVD here. All right, here we go.
Your own government is using more force and more coercion on its own citizens for the purpose of achieving its political ends. Is that government engaged in terrorism?
Now let's watch the government add insult to injury to the people of New Orleans.
No one will be able to be armed. We will take all weapons.
That happened today in this wealthy neighborhood where homeowners had armed themselves to protect their mansions. Residents were handcuffed on the ground. In the end, police took their weapons but let them stay in their homes.
Wasn't that kind and generous of the government to allow people to stay in their own homes? How thoughtful. Of course, they couldn't defend themselves from looters.
You see how messed up that is? Like, the Constitution guarantees you the right to bear arms. That's what the Constitution is, what we're supposed to live under. That's the law of the land. Officers swear an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States. Who are they supposed to defend? Us. They're supposed to protect our rights outlined in the Constitution from tyrannical people, from authority figures that want to take our rights. They're not supposed to listen to authority to come violate our rights. But that's what they're doing. They're going and they use an emergency. There's a saying in the occult called order out of chaos, order opt out. I believe that phrase is on some Freemasonry symbols, order opt out. It's order out of chaos. They use chaos because when people are afraid, when people are in danger, they get the critical thinking turns off. People just get tunnel vision. They just want to escape the danger. They just want to not be afraid. And so in that chaotic situation, they can offer a solution that takes away freedom. People are willing to give up their freedom to get out of this chaotic situation. So they call it order out of chaos, order out of cow. And they'll either wait for some sort of chaotic situation to happen, or they'll instigate a chaotic situation. They'll cause the chaos and then offer their solution. It's called a false flag event, where the government creates an event to scare people, to put them into that state of chaos, and then offer some sort of solution. And every time the solution is a step towards tyranny. Like right here, these officers ought to know. They swore an oath to defend the Constitution. They ought to know when a command comes down from legislators or governors or presidents that say, hey, go take everybody's weapons. They ought to go, no, they have a constitutional right to have weapons. You're not allowed to take their weapons. We're here to defend them from you. But that's what it's martial law. They've trained these officers to think that government is the authority. The Constitution is the authority. Government is just employees hired by the American people to represent them.
For many of the police and guard troops, it is an uncomfortable job to do this in an American city.
You never expect to do this in your own country.
Walking up and down these streets, you don't want to think about the stuff that you're going to have to do.
We are losing our right to property. The government is getting more pretext to seize it using the power to confiscate it with eminent domain. The asset forfeiture laws are proliferated. It's easier for the prosecutors to come in and make an accusation against you and confiscate your property even though they have no evidence that you've done anything wrong. Guilt or innocence doesn't really matter that much because it's very convenient for the government.
Unfortunately, what is being sold to the American people today as Americanism, if you peel off the label, you find so much similarity to what we were fighting against when we were fighting communism and Nazism and fascism.
The government's now putting a national ID card together and they want checkpoints.
We will be carrying our papers, and they have recommended there'll be checkpoints throughout the country.
Isn't that what Nazi Germany did that everybody in America was against? Papers, please.
They just used that during the pandemic. They were trying to push this. I can't say certain words, otherwise YouTube will ban me. But you know what I'm talking about. A paper identifying you as a certain type of individual. They were pushing that like it happened in other countries. That's why we see this isn't just an American thing. This is worldwide. This is the beast system. This is the new world order. All these countries acted in collusion with each other. Like, it was crazy to see over the last couple of years that whether it was the European countries or Australia or Canada or America, they were all just falling in line, following the same agenda. And so once again, they used a crisis, whether real or simulated, whether a naturally occurring situation or a created situation. They used that chaos to promote an agenda, to take steps towards tyranny. And it was, have your papers in order to do certain things. Like, that almost happened. Like, so another thing they do is they condition people. Like, they'll promote an idea and then see how much resistance there is to it. All right, and then back off of it, only to come back to it again later after people have been conditioned. So, and they'll use like propaganda. That's what the media in Hollywood does. They'll repeat an idea over and over and over. You'll see it come up in movies and over and over and over. They're conditioning people to get them used to this. That way, the next time it comes forward, the next time, like they almost got it this last time, the next time something happens, they will get it because they've now conditioned people to that idea. Where you had a whole say, like prior to that, everybody would have been in resistance to it. everybody got super scared, and a big portion of the population submitted to it. But there was still a little bit of resistance. Next time, that resistance will be gone.
May I see your papers?
May we see your papers?
I don't think I have them on me.
In that case, we'll have to ask you to come along.
Wait, it's possible that yes. Here we are.
And again, that's the problem with the technology, the advancements in technology. Like, when you look at the Dark Ages and how Catholicism persecuted the biblical Christians, you could have ran, you could have hidden from them. They really didn't have the ability to track and isolate individuals, and even back here, carrying around like a passport, a legitimate piece of paper, like, the government knows where you're at all times nowadays. Like, there's no hiding anymore, and that is just going to continue to advance until the Bible says that everybody will actually have a mark put in them. You're not just going to have a tracking device here. You're going to have a tracking device here, and they'll sell it with positives like, a Wi-Fi hotspot right there, always with you. All your banking, credit cards, ID, everything right there. You don't have to carry a wallet anymore. It's so convenient.
These papers expired 3 weeks ago. You'll have to come along. Halt! Halt!
The new legislation, the national ID card is in it. It takes 3 or 4 pages to describe, and it will be connected with our driver's licenses. The states will be instructed on exactly what they have to do. Social security numbers will be used. Some type of...
That's crazy. When this came out, that national ID card was just a conspiracy theory, but now it's a reality. Go to the DMV and you got to get your national ID in order to like, your state license doesn't work anymore. You got to get a national ID.
Of a physical proof, such as fingerprints or retinal prints, have to be on it.
Yeah, dude, the thing that blew my mind, it talks about you won't be able to open a bank account. The thing that occurred recently that blew my mind was how social media, with the censorship, the way society is just silencing and blacklisting and just the cancel culture. What blew my mind is that banks were shutting down the accounts of people simply for their Facebook posts and stuff. Like not only were you being pulled off of Facebook or banned on Twitter, but your bank account was being shut down. That was shocking to me, because that is the beast system. Without that mark, the Bible says you won't be able to buy or sell. We're actually seeing the first fruits of that in today's society. It's mind-boggling. Like, there's not much left that needs to occur for us to move into this New World Order system. I remember learning about RFID back.
It is time to wake up, America. These ID cards are not about defeating terrorism, but they are all about controlling the American people. I arranged an interview with Catherine Albrecht, a leading authority on the RFID chip. Her book entitled Spy Chips is the definitive book on this subject. I wanted to find out just how dangerous these chips are to our liberties.
RFID.
I recommend, I don't know if this woman's still alive or around. 10, 15 years ago, I used to listen to her on the radio. She was on, there was this Radio Global Communication Network, maybe, GCN, or something like that. It had a lot of good radio programs. Stan Monteith was on there. I recommend listening to him. I don't think I agree with his end times positions. Maybe I'm getting him mixed up with somebody else, but he's worth checking out. And then Catherine Albrecht was really, really good too. listen, read anything you can find from this woman. I love this woman. She's one of my heroes here.
RFID is a technology that uses tiny computer chips the size of a grain of sand or even smaller, hooked up to miniature antennas to transmit information about items at a distance. Back in 1999, Procter & Gamble, Gillette, and MIT got together to find a way to commercialize this technology and make it small enough, make it efficient enough, and make it low cost enough to, essentially, their dream is to put one of these tiny computer chips on every physical item manufactured on planet Earth. The latest technology for identifying people at the point of sale, for identifying people when they make purchases, is actually the implantable chip that you can actually embed directly into human flesh. It's a tiny glass capsule about the size of a grain of rice. It contains an RFID computer chip with a coiled antenna, and it can transmit information also at a distance.
So I mentioned when I first learned about RFID, I was reading an article in the Star Tribune out of Minneapolis. I remember I was riding the bus to work, and I was reading the Star Tribune, and there was an article on this implantable RFID microchip, and the company that producing it was called Digital Angel, and like the spiritual hairs on the back of my neck stood up because the devil, Lucifer, is a fallen angel, and this mark of the beast, this implantable microchip, was coming from an organization called the Digital Angel. I've had I don't know if they changed their name shortly after that or what it is, but I think it's called VeriChip now. Or maybe the chip itself is called VeriChip and Digital Angel is just one of the companies producing it or something. I don't know, but I remember reading that and thinking, wow, man, this is crazy. This is the formation of Revelation chapter 13 happening right here in front of us, right in front of our eyes.
Can a microscopic tag be implanted in a person's body to track his every movement? There's actual discussion about that. You will rule on that, mark my words, before your tenure is over.
Homeland Security folks, the Department of Defense, and others have expressed an interest in being able to more closely monitor the U.S. populace. And one way to do that, of course, would be being able to determine who buys what and where they take those things. Radio waves can travel through walls, they can travel through wood, they can travel through the things we normally rely on to protect our privacy. For example, your purse, your backpack, your pocket, anything you're wearing or carrying. Kraft Philadelphia cream cheese has been tagged with RFID and sold to consumers, as have Mach 3 razor products and other Gillette razor products, without the knowledge of the consumer. One of the tiny chips could actually even be the dot on the letter I on the back of the fine print on a package that you purchase. They were talking about having reader devices in every airport, on every bus, on every train, on every port, on every dock. One of the most worrisome applications of RFID are proposals to put them into cash, meaning that you would be able to track every banknote, where it had been, who it had been issued to, and create, in essence, an audit trail.
Well, now we'll just move to a cashless society. It'll all be electronic. You won't carry, like, who carries cash anymore? They've, like, almost already got us all conditioned to that. But this is making me think, I'm sure you've heard the phrase the Internet of Things. Like, they want to have everything interconnected. I even heard one time that they want every tree marked. Like, they want these electronic devices, RFID technology, on everything, so that everything is communicating, smart devices everywhere. The whole world will become one big tracking system that'll monitor and tabulate everything you ever do. And it's crazy too. I remember reading years and years ago, probably mid 2000s, that in Brussels there was a supercomputer that had the ability to track every single individual in the world. And it was able to compute, like, I forget what it was, but an astronomical amount of information about every person on the planet every second. Like, it could monitor everything. And they nicknamed the supercomputer the Beast. It was the Beast supercomputer. Just crazy.
That would essentially take away the anonymity of cash that we now enjoy today. The ATM machine itself, as the money came through the roller device, would be reading each number, and they would know who you are because, of course, you identify yourself at the bank before you take money out. And down the road, when you go to pay at a major retailer, it would also be possible for them, as they're putting the money into the cash drawer, to simply feed it through a little reader device. It would go in, it would tag that number and transfer possession from Aaron Russo, say, to Walmart. Once everything you do is tied down to a single number and there is no longer the ability to pay with cash, then all it takes to render you a non-citizen is to simply turn that chip off. You will no longer be able to really participate in any function in society, including buy food.
So through the implementation of the Federal Reserve System, the American citizen has gone from being a private individual who had real money, gold, in his possession that was private, to a citizen who has no privacy because all money is now being digitized. They can deduct whatever amount of money they want out of your digits whenever they want. They can trace you whenever they want. You'll be at their mercy. God forbid we allow this to happen in America.
This is absolutely Orwellian. I mean, it's talking about Big Brother looking over your shoulder at absolutely everything you do, every purchase you make, every place you go, every company you interact with. All of that would be reported back potentially to the government.
Revelation 13 causes all, both small, great, rich, poor, free, bond, receive a mark in their right hand or in their forehead. An important reason why you need to read the King James Bible. Other versions have changed that to say a mark on the right hand or on the forehead. And I believe that that's because when the implantable chip comes, there will be some who say, oh, it can't be the mark of the beast. It's in the hand. It's not on the hand. But the Bible, the King James says in the hand or in the forehead.
Pizza Palace, guaranteed to have 30 minutes or it's free. This is Mary. May I take your order?
Hi, Mary. Yes, I'd like to order.
Is this Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Thank you for calling again, sir. I show your national identification number is 610-204-999-8-45-54610. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. I see you live at 736 Montrose Court, but you're calling from your cell phone. Are you at home?
I'm just leaving work, but I'm...
Oh, we can deliver to Bob's Auto Supply. That's at 175 Lincoln Avenue, yes?
No, I'm on my way home. How do you know all this stuff?
We just got wired into the system, sir.
Oh, well, I'd like to order a couple of your double meat special pizzas.
Sure thing. There'll be a new $20 charge for those, sir.
What do you mean?
Sir, the system shows me that your medical records indicate that you have high blood pressure and extremely high cholesterol. Luckily, we have a new agreement with your national health care provider that allows us to sell you double meat pies as long as you agree to waive all future claims of liability.
What?
Do you agree, sir? You can sign the form when we deliver, but there is a charge for processing. The total is $67 even.
$67?
Well, that includes the delivery surcharge of $15 to cover the added risk to our driver of traveling through an orange zone.
I live in an orange zone?
Now you do. Looks like there was another robbery on Montrose yesterday. You could save $48 if you ordered our special Sprout Submarine Combo and picked it up yourself. Comes with tofu sticks. Those are very tasty, sir. Good value, too.
But I want double meat.
Well, I'm sure you can afford the $67 then. You just bought those tickets to Hawaii. They weren't cheap, eh? Oh, but I see you checked out the budget beach bum at the library last week. Up to you, sir.
All right. I'll get the Sprout subs.
Good choice, sir. Gotta watch that waist if you're hitting the beach, eh? 42 inches. Wow. Man, I'd say tofu and sprouts is like required.
That's how much?
Just between you and me, there's a $3 off coupon in this month's Total Men's Fitness magazine. Your wife Betty subscribes to that, right? Anyhow, clip that and it's $19.99 even. Whoa, looks like you maxed out on all your credit cards. Bring cash, okay?
Have we been...
That technology exists. It won't be as innocent as that, though. It's not going to be just your pizza. That already exists, man. The government already knows everything we do because we're all connected to this. We all got smart devices. Nobody, it's very rare to find somebody living off the grid. Just doing stuff like this. I'm surprised that they allow it to go forth, but then also it's like they probably track this stuff so that they get a list of like who's looking into these things. So like people often ask like these conspiracy type people, oh, why do they let them live? You know, well, it'd be pretty easy to use them kind of like a lighthouse. You allow them to keep going, and you see who tunes in. And now you know everybody who, you know, you got to be worried about. It's I don't know. That's my conspiracy mind talking. But I remember a long time ago, there was this guy. So in the Pentagon, they don't just have military; they also have civilian workers. And so this gentleman who said that he was the highest ranked civilian in the Pentagon. And he stated that the Pentagon has lists, like I forget what he called it, but let's say a green and red list, that when martial law kicks off, when this authoritarian system rolls out, if you're on the red list, you're getting taken out immediately. And like if you're on the green list, you're going to like a re-education center or something like that. I can't remember. I've never been able to find that again. I wish I could remember who the guy was that said it or where I heard it. It may have been through Officer Jack McLam, which is another one of my heroes. I have a really hard time finding stuff of his. But if you can find anything, I think he just does like talks, seminars and stuff like that. He's passed away now, but if you can find anything of his, watch it. He's a really good resource as well.
Become so controlled and so ignorant about our rights that big institutions and big government can do whatever they want with us, even without our approval? I knew for certain the founding fathers would resist to the death what is happening in America today. And I, for one, will not accept a national ID card. And if nobody accepts a national ID card, and nobody can board a plane without one, then let the airlines go bankrupt. And if you can't open a bank account in a big money center bank, then open an account in a small local bank. And if we can't walk into a federal building, I personally would consider that a blessing. Don't allow these institutions to dictate to us how we conduct our lives. This is America, and we have free choice. We the people have all the power, not the government. Government gets its power from us, not the other way around. Think of all the men and women who died in all our wars, fighting for freedom, not Federal Reserve bankers. Do you think they sacrificed their lives so that Americans could be chipped like a dog? So we could all have a homing device inside us? No. This ID card is the last step before they implant us. And that's precisely the reason nobody should accept one. And you know what they're going to do? They're going to call in the propaganda machine, the media, and try and sell this as if it were in everybody's best interest.
We're working on a product that we have called internally a PLD. PLD stands for Personal Locating Device, which is an implantable GPS for which our company owns a patent. The hybrid of the two of these products, being Digital Angel and Verichip, is what we call PLD. PLD should be in prototype form by the end of this year, by December of 2002, and we are already working with the Food and Drug Administration as well as legislative agencies with these products and ultimately with the PLD.
We have a Florida family who are really pioneers in a brave new world. They have volunteered to be the first ever to have microchip identification devices implanted into their body.
After 9/11, I was really concerned with the security of my family.
Dude, I can't stand the media. Oh, just gotta take a deep breath. They're just wicked, lying, deceiving puppets. Who was that? Diane Sawyer? Was she a member of the CFR? You can get a list of the CFR. I know a lot of the media are members of the CFR. I can't remember if she was on that list or not, but yeah, I just get angry looking at them.
I wouldn't mind having something planted permanently in my arm that would identify me.
Forgive me. I know their sin is not worse than ours, you know. They're deceived deceivers, blind leading the blind, but like they're aware of their deception. I just got to remember, like, their sin's no different than mine. You know, they're lost, they're wicked. It's the principalities and powers and dark forces behind them that are the real issue. It's hard to do what, like, it's hard to keep that in mind when you study this kind of stuff, because you realize these people are aware of what they're doing. They know they're deceiving. They have sold out. They're part of the occult system. They've agreed to the Luciferian system. They're part of it. They're part of the machine. It's hard to know that, and then also understand that they're lost souls. You know, like we once were, children of darkness. I get so angry at them. I apologize for what I said earlier. It's hard, like, when you study this stuff out, the scriptures talk about, because evil abounds, the love of many grows cold. And I've seen that in my own heart. That's the danger of looking into these things, is like you can get so angry at the unjust, wicked deception that the love you're supposed to have for the lost starts to grow cold. You start to just get frustrated and angry and irritated and vengeful. So you have to temper that and realize, you know, you gotta love and love these people and pray that they come out of the darkness and get saved.
Talk about identification papers. Watch what happens to a woman in Florida whose license was suspended.
Get out of the car or I'm going to tase you.
The next street off the Seacrest.
On your stomach. Do it now. Put your hands behind your back. Do it now. Do it now or you're going to get tased again. Do it now. Do it now. On your back. Put your hands behind your back. Put your hands behind your back.
I can't. Sure you can. Come here. Ow, ow, ow.
Oh, got it.
Got blood on her. Oh my God. You tased me and you handcuffed me?
Yep, you're under arrest.
For what reason?
Your license is suspended.
All the power is in the people. And to the extent that government becomes alienated from the people, does things that people don't want, power is transferred until you finally come to a police state, totalitarian state, whatever word you want to give it, where the desires of the people really have no consequence. They go out and they vote. Doesn't make any difference which candidate they elect.
I'm a programmer. I worked for NASA, worked for ExxonMobil, worked for Department of Transportation.
Mr. Curtis, are there programs that can be used to secretly fix elections?
Yes.
How do you know that to be the case?
Because in October of 2000, I wrote a prototype for President Congressman Tom Feeney at the company I worked for in Oviedo, Florida, that did just that.
And when you say did just that, it would rig an election?
It would flip the vote 51-49 to whoever you wanted it to go to and whichever race you wanted to win.
And would that program that you designed be something that elections officials that might be on county boards of elections could detect?
They'd never see it.
So how would such a program, a secret program that fixes the election, how could it be detected?
You would have to view it either in the source code or you'd have to have a receipt and then count the hard paper against the actual vote total. Other than that, you won't see it.
I mean, we just went through this last, wait, was it 2 years ago already now? Man, time's going by quick. Life is a vapor. But yeah, I mean, but either way, you know, they control both sides of the aisle, Republican, Democrat. That's an illusion, you know. The Republicans offer moral rhetoric. They act like they're on our side. They act like they're for morality. But in office, they do nothing. They do nothing to help us. They're part of the scheme. They're part of the system.
Given the availability of such vote rigging software and the testimony that has been given under oath of substantial statistical anomalies and gross differences between exit polling data and the actual tabulated results, do you have an opinion whether or not the Ohio election, presidential election, was hacked?
Yes, I would say it was.
So in other words, there is absolutely no assurance whatsoever on anything with regard to these machines?
Absolutely none.
Anybody who trusts electronic voting machines should have their head examined.
Now we can see a new world coming into view. A world in which there is the very real prospect of a new world order.
The New World Order will be built, an end run on national sovereignty, eroding it piece by piece, will accomplish much more than the old-fashioned frontal assault. Council on Foreign Relations. We shall have world government, whether or not we like it. The only question is whether world government will be achieved by conquest or consent. Paul Warburg, Council on Foreign Relations and architect of the Federal Reserve System.
There's a group that get together internationally and they sort of play God with our money from
You
this.
think that's part of what George Bush said was the One World Order?
So the Council on Foreign Relations is the managing system of the New World Order in America. They're the ones that dictate to the president and senators and Congress what the agenda is, what needs to be done. The CFR. I think, and then in England you have like the Royal Institute of Affairs or something like that. And then England, America, and Japan combine in the Trilateral Commission. And then worldwide you have an organization called the Bilderberg. And then, so these are all just managing systems to promote and put into place the ideas of the New World Order system. The pyramid, which is one of the reasons they probably use that symbol, is a way to look at this. You have the masses on the bottom. Each level up is a more controlling system. So you have the masses, and then you have governments and police and whatnot. Above that, you have the occult. Well, you probably have two arms to it. You have a religious arm to it, and then an industrial military arm to it. So you have different occult organizations and different like fraternity type things. Skull and Bones, Bohemian Grove, Mormonism, Catholicism, Freemasonry, things like that. Above that, you have your councils, your managing. It's like a business. It's your mid management, your Council on Foreign Relations, your Trilateral Commission, your Bilderberg, your Royal Institute of Affairs, and above that you have your Council of 300, I think is what it is. The Illuminati. There's different names. Which is like your upper management, and then above them you have your CEOs, your board of directors, which is like the Council of 33. And then above that you have the Illuminati, the 13 families that run everything, that control everything. And then above that you have the principalities and powers, demonic forces, and at the peak you have the I, Lucifer, running it all.
They can't have a new world order only with a world police, military.
Right.
I think the financial system ultimately is even more important than the guns.
The central bankers of the world are working together to create a one world government, a global police state as sinister as anything George Orwell ever wrote about, where every person on the planet Earth will have an RFID chip implanted, where the bankers and the governments can monitor every transaction you make.
A chip in everybody would be the universal monetary system par excellence, because there'd be no escape from it, and you'd be totally under the control of those who issue the electronic impulses in that chip.
Their strategies are being accomplished through the World Trade Organization, the International Monetary Fund, and the Bank for International Settlements, which is the central bank for all the central banks of the world. Most people don't have a clue that these unelected private bankers actually control the governments of the world. They have financed and profited from every war since World War I without concern for humanity. The war in Iraq is an attempt by the Federal Reserve and their partner, the Bank of England, to control the Middle East and to make it a part of the New World Order. To defend the New World Order, U.S. soldiers will have to kill and die. Arthur Schlesinger, Counselor on Foreign Relations. Military men are just dumb, stupid animals to be used as pawns in foreign policy. Henry Kissinger, Counselor on Foreign Relations. Now let's listen to this quote by Robert Reich, a member of President Clinton's cabinet and one of his most trusted advisors. The dirty little secret is that both houses of Congress are irrelevant. America's domestic policy is now being run by Alan Greenspan and the Federal Reserve. America's foreign policy is now being run by the International Monetary Fund. When the president decides to go to war, he no longer needs a declaration of war from Congress. Dr. Carol Quigley, professor from Georgetown University, who was also President Clinton's mentor, said in his book, Tragedy and Hope, the powers of financial capitalism had a far-reaching aim, nothing less than to create a world system of financial control in private hands, able to dominate the political system of each country and the economy of the world as a whole. And then President Clinton's Deputy Secretary of State, Strobe Talbot, said, in the next century, nations as we know it will be obsolete. All states will recognize a single global authority. All these supposed free trade agreements, NAFTA, GATT, CAFTA, are truly nothing more than the governments of the world and the central banks working together to create a one-world government. They are not free trade. These treaties are government-managed trade, and they are destroying the American worker. Through these treaties, the bankers are actually beginning to control the laws of the world. The fact is that this relationship between the bankers, the government, and the huge multinational corporations is the very reason why the government no longer enforces its immigration laws. The bankers want a one-world government without borders, and the American government is obeying them. If the government was so worried about terrorism, why are they leaving the borders open, but at the same time telling American citizens they need an ID card with an RFID chip?
The Bush administration's open borders policy and its decision to ignore the enforcement of this country's immigration laws is part of a broader agenda. President Bush signed a formal agreement that will end the United States as we know it, and he took the step without approval from either the U.S. Congress or the people of the United States. Bill Tucker reports.
The Security and Prosperity Partnership of North America sounds benign, hardly like a policy that critics call NAFTA on steroids. It's a deal that few have even heard of.
It's being done again by very few people at the very top on behalf of the investment class, but the working class of people, political officials across our country, from communities, from cities and so forth, they don't know anything about this.
Yet it was agreed to by Mexico's President Fox, Canada's Prime Minister Martin, and President Bush in 2005. Administration officials counter their critics by...
I often wonder, because I've been watching this stuff now for 20-some years, and a lot of the things that seem to be moving us towards a new world order never come to fruition. And I wonder, like, why? Because, like, when it happens, like this here, North American Union or the Amero, remember the European created the currency called the euro. The North American Union was supposed to come out with an Amero, Canadian, American, Mexican currency combined. And, or like the, that big, huge highway system they were going to build from like Mexico City up into Canada. And so, like, I was just thinking, like, why don't, because when these things happen and you see them, like when you're studying this stuff, you'll see all sorts of things happen. Once you're awake and aware and you see these things, you're like, ooh, I see where that's going. That's leading towards the New World Order. And then it doesn't happen. So I think, like, maybe you have all these people that have the same, these elitists coming from all different corners, different managing styles, but they all have this one agenda. They all have an agenda of New World Order. And so they all have different ideas of how to get there. And so they just throw all these ideas into the public atmosphere. And sometimes they take and sometimes they don't. So, like, I remember the Club of Rome had put out years ago an idea of having all these different unions, having 10 different unions, 10 different regions. So you'd have this one world government divided into 10 regions. And then kind of like, you know, like America is one country with 50 states. And we would have this one world government with the 10 regions, the European Union, the North American Union, the South American Union, the Pacific Union, or whatever. But these things don't come to be, so it's like, yeah, I think it is just all these, you have all these managing systems coming up with ideas of how to get us into this New World Order system, and then they throw it all at the wall, and you know, 10% of it works, and that's okay with them because they're continually advancing. So, like, people would probably use that to discredit you, be like, oh, you know, I thought you said these FEMA camps were going to happen, you know, after 9/11, and I thought you said, you know, we were going to have the mark of the beast when that national ID card come out, and it's like, well, we're moving in that direction. All these things are used to get us moving in that direction. Sometimes they take, sometimes they don't. The point is, we're aware of what their goal is, we're aware of what their agenda is, and so we can see why they're doing these things.
Saying everything about SPP is on the White House website, and they say the partnership is not a treaty, but more of an outline of priorities between the United States, Mexico, and Canada. Still, some wonder why there haven't been public discussions about the goals being pursued.
You know, I was asked the other day about whether or not I really thought the American people had the stomach to stand up and stop this nonsense, this direction from a group of elites in absolute contravention of our law, of our Constitution, every national value. And I hope, I pray that I'm right when I said yes. But this is beyond belief.
Look what happened in Europe. The people that voted down the European Constitution wanted each country to stay sovereign. Yet the private central bankers are pushing the governments forward to make this constitution happen.
Didn't that just happen with Great Britain? Like before, like in 2018 or something like that? The British people voted to get out of the European Union. Has that happened yet? Why hasn't that happened yet? Aren't they still part of the European Union?
Even though the people voted against it and clearly do not want a world government nor one European government.
Bankers own the earth. Take it away from them, but leave them the power to create money. And with the flick of the pen, they will create enough money to buy back again. However, take away from them the power to create money, and all the great fortunes like mine will disappear, and they ought to disappear, for this would be a happier and better world to live in. But if you wish to remain the slaves of bankers and pay the cost of your own slavery, let them continue to create money. Sir Josiah Stamp, former director of the Bank of England.
Now pay close attention to this quote by David Rockefeller, and you'll understand what is happening in the world today and where the American people are heading as a nation.
That's one of the Illuminati families. One of the heads of the pyramid is the Rockefeller family.
We are grateful to the Washington Post, the New York Times, Time Magazine, and other great publications whose directors have attended our meetings and respected their promises of discretion for almost 40 years. It would have been impossible for us to develop our plan for the world if we had been subjected to the lights of publicity during those years. But now, the world is more sophisticated and prepared to march towards a world government. The supranational sovereignty of an intellectual elite and world bankers is surely preferable to the national autodetermination practiced in past centuries. David Rockefeller, a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, actually believes that we would be better off if he and his bank of friends ran the world.
The real rulers in Washington are invisible and exercise power from behind the scenes. Felix Frankfurter, Supreme Court.
Benito Mussolini had a great quote about fascism. He said that fascism should be called corporatism more properly because it's the perfect merger of power between the corporation and the state. That's how we define fascism. And that's what we're seeing here.
The media controls the information that a person gets. In various ways, they can make sure that the average American watching the tube or reading the newspaper is going to come out with a certain mindset. He's going to say, this is good, that's bad, and that's all they have to do.
You look at the ownership of corporate media in this country. Who owns CBS? Viacom? Who owns NBC? GE? Who owns ABC? Disney?
Americans have been taught to expect their salvation from government instead of recognizing government as the most dangerous threat they'll face in their lives.
And the United States putting together a constitution now for Iraq. You know, why don't we just give Mars? I mean, think about it. It served us well for over 200 years, and we don't appear to be using it anymore, so what the hell?
Christians... Well, let's finish this and then we'll talk about it.
I like the old idea where you could do what you thought you could do and what you wanted to do as long as you didn't hurt other people.
I think that the ultimate choice that's being presented to mankind is that it's time to either evolve or perish. Grow up or die. Become adults. Act like adults. Take some responsibility.
Fast forward, I can't remember. Okay, that's it. Okay, so what is a Christian's response in light of these things? I did a whole lot of talking during that part, so I'll keep this brief, but this is something I've wrestled with a lot. Like, in light of these things, what is our response to it? I think, so it's important to be aware so that you can separate your heart from this world, from the love of the world. You recognize that this world belongs to Satan. Every last bit of it is being orchestrated for an anti-Christian purpose. It's all moving towards destruction. So separate yourself from it as much as possible. You know, we have to live here. We have to use money. We have to have jobs. But don't love it. You know, be prepared to separate from it all at some point. To not love it enough where you're willing to betray Christ for the sake of the world. You know, for the sake of comfort. Someday you may be called upon to not have a bank account, to not have a job, to not be able to rent, to not be able to own, to not be able to buy or sell. Be willing to be okay with that. Say, that's fine. I've counted the cost. I love the Lord, not this world. I'm going with the Lord. He wins in the end. You know, if we have to suffer a little bit for a little bit of time, so be it. We get eternity in glory. So keep that in mind. That's why it's important to know these things, to understand that this is a wicked, evil world. This entire system is a satanic system. So separate yourself from it. That's important. And then preach the gospel. You know, that's what we're here for, is to proclaim the gospel of Jesus Christ, to let others know that there's a different kingdom. There's a spiritual kingdom. There's an everlasting kingdom that they can be a part of, to proclaim that gospel and to pray and hope that souls are saved, that they're translated from this kingdom of darkness into the kingdom of light, and you know, pray that the Lord would use you with whatever gifts and talents, by whatever means he's given to you, to proclaim his gospel and to call people out of this dark world. So that's what's important. That's a Christian's response. To be aware, to be prepared to give it all up for Christ's sake, to live for his glory, to seek and to see souls saved, to proclaim the gospel, to live a holy and righteous life, seeing that all these things, everything around us, seeing that it's all satanic and it's all going to burn. You know, what manner of men ought we to be? You know, to strive for that holiness. and to keep going, to realize that, you know, we're all gonna fall, we all sin, but don't be discouraged. Pick yourself up and keep going. Keep striving after that holiness. You know, I have to remind myself of that. You know, I struggle with my own personal sins, but our goal is to walk in holiness and to proclaim His glory. And then as far as like getting involved in marches and protests and all that, I really don't see the point in that. This isn't our world. We can't fix it through legislation. We can't fix it through enforced morality. It doesn't belong to us. It's not ours. It's the dark kingdom of Satan. It's going to progress towards more and more wickedness. There's nothing we can do to curtail that except to see souls saved. Because as a person, as individuals are saved and brought into our kingdom, they will be transformed by the Holy Spirit to live moral, righteous lives. So individuals can be drawn out of that and can be caused to walk in holiness. We can't force the system to be holy. It's not going to happen. And so as far as all that, I don't agree with the protesting, the you know, if you want to do that, you know, I think it's a waste of time. I don't see any sin in it, except for Timothy says that a good soldier doesn't, this is a bad paraphrase, but in 2 Timothy it says a good soldier doesn't entangle himself with the affairs of the world. He keeps his mind focused on his master's business. Let the world do what the world's going to do. Stay focused on the master's business. But you know, if you want to get involved, you know, I don't know if there's sin in it other than that particular verse, but I think it's fruitless. I think your energy, your time, your gifts can be used for the kingdom, not for morality. We're not for trying to enforce a religious system on a dark satanic world. Just preach the gospel to individuals, just see individuals saved. But we can, you know, we are to rebuke the darkness. We are to call it out. We are to try to enlighten other people, to expose the unfruitful works of darkness, to share this information in a spirit of gentleness and meekness and humility and love and compassion, understanding that those who have ears to hear will hear. You know, some people are, you know, just not going to hear it, you know, and that's just move on. That's the Lord's business. We're just supposed to proclaim truth. So I think that's what a Christian is supposed to do, is to be aware, to be separated, to not have your heart set on the things of the world, and to stay focused on the kingdom of God. So with that, we'll wrap it up. Lord willing, we're going to watch the G. Edward Griffin interview, the collectivist conspiracy, next. Like I said on the last video, I think I've only watched clips of that, so I want to watch through it before jumping in this. I suppose we could just jump into it. G. Edward Griffin is great, you know, so anything we hear from him is going to be good stuff, but Lord willing, we'll check that out next time. All right, thanks for watching, guys. I love you, and we'll talk to you later.